so professional, man. How you guys doing today, man? We are back with another episode of a podcast about nothing, where someone's nothing could be something to someone and somehow make their tomorrows better than their yesterdays. I'm here today with a good friend of mine, somebody who I admire in their journey in life, not just the journey in art, but also someone that we always sit down and have an interesting conversation. We are sitting here at a TT Studios today, and this is one of the artists that is presenting their work right now, right downstairs in the gallery as we speak. And I could say all of these grand things, but we're just gonna get straight to the conversation, because when me and him in the room, we just talk, man. We just get this thing going. But this is Tim Engelhardt. Tim, you mind saying hello to the people, man?
Hello, people.
See, I'm talking about straight to the point. Straight to the point, man. So, Tim, man, we for one, I want to say congratulations on your show, man. That's downstairs showing right now, a Dance with Color. As I look at your work, brother, as I look at the work, and I have for years, you know, this work that you have downstairs is compared to what I'm used to seeing when I think of Tim Engelhardt, when it comes to figurative, right? You lately you've been tapping in on this abstraction, which is something you probably have done before, but
and more coming back to it and letting it mature.
Yeah. So what was it? You know, when I look at it, you're also not just using acrylic. You know, there's a whole bunch of, how can I say this? There's a lot going on, but still very intriguing. Like I'm still getting lost in it. Where did this work come from, and what was it like creating it?
So it evolved. My last show here was 2 years ago, to the day, right?
To the day.
And that was all like abstract portraiture, if you will. And that was more about expressing myself and the need to escape, avoidance, just heavy nature stuff that I think many of us experience. And it was, I've always been drawn to figurative stuff,
right?
And I used to be all I drew and painted years ago before I made this a career. And but once that was done, I had accomplished what I had set out to accomplish with that show and with the work, and was sort of in this limbo, and was really painted with, went back to abstract, which is where I really started, and was working mostly with like a limited color palette of just a red and like a yellow ochre and ivory black and some white, and it was just really gray, subdued kind of stuff, but there was still a little bit of color, but it felt depressing, right? I felt like I was not really being, I don't want to say authentic. I was really just kind of exploring, experimenting, trying things. I felt my work was maybe a little too busy. Let's try some minimalist stuff. And just not being afraid to do any of that.
Well, that journey, even like me being an artist myself, that was something that, because I'm fairly, I can say when it came down for me to commit to the life as an artist, like me being an artist, I'm fairly, I could say fairly new, like in the past 4 years, right? So I went from the figurative, like when I first seen your work, to starting to explore the abstract world. Mm-hmm. And the reason for it was almost similar to what you said. It was getting to the point where I was tired of trying to find something to ignite the reason why I paint.
Yeah.
And just when I was getting to the abstract, it just felt like I was just painting. Mm-hmm. I was just like feeling it out. I was discovering. It was just like there was so much more freedom in expressing this whatever this is in me. And it was a heck of a journey, man. It was a heck of a journey. So
always is.
Yeah, it always is.
Yeah.
So like when did when did this, I could say this series, when did you commit to it and say, you know what, I got something here, I want to play more in it?
Oh, I don't know if I've committed to it.
Okay. Strong words.
I don't know if I commit to any particular style. It's a continuing conversation, as I've heard you mentioned before, but it's a continuing conversation and exploration. Really, like, I got bored with being expressive of how I felt.
Okay.
Right? Like, I got tired of, I'm depressed, and how do I paint that? I have anxiety.
Right.
Everybody has anxiety. Everybody's dealing with something. Mm-hmm. And it started becoming redundant, and I was bored with it. Yeah. A big thing that changed was our family went to Mexico for a vacation, and I was just unexpectedly surprised and exposed by the energy and the colors and all that. And I wanted to hold on to that somehow. And shortly after we got back, I started this series of works that was really more responsive to what I was listening to. I listened to a lot of jazz, and so these works were, they have almost, especially 50s, 60s, bebop, hard bop kind of stuff. And so there's sort of this mid-century feel to them, but there's a lot of color, a lot of like pop, yellow, and I also started becoming fearless a bit with my work, where I started incorporating paper and collage stuff, making it interesting.
Yeah. This is the first time you kind of experimented with those type of materials?
On a more professional level, yeah.
Okay.
I'm fascinated with like fiber arts and multimedia stuff, and I, even when I paint, I feel like I'm painting sculpturally. Like, I put a lot of paint on it and then I take away, and I'm just, and that continues to today. I'm just taking away, like revealing new colors, and it's, a lot of it's purposeful. I put on your basic color theory stuff, right? I'm putting blue on top of yellow because I want green right there. And it does matter, like what blue I use and what yellow is beneath it, and exploring all of that. And so, a lot of the work that's downstairs has been, it's the first time I've shown it outside of my studio.
How long have you been working on these pieces? You said you went to Mexico and it kind of started there. So
it started there, came back, and mid-June to mid-July, I do scenic artwork for a performing art camp in Sewickley. And then after that, my daughter's home from school and my wife works from home, and it's sort of this, I feel like I need to be at home, to sort of be there for my daughter, so that she's not distracting my wife, who needs to be focused on work. And when I went back into the studio, I just felt like I had lost that sort of that energy, and I was trying to recapture it. And so the colors were a little more opaque, a little more bold, a little too yellow.
I got you.
And not that I have anything against the color yellow, I still work with it, but it was heavy.
It's interesting, man. Like certain works take certain environments to embody like the energy that's needed to produce them, man. And I never really thought of that. Like because last time I seen you, I think you did mention, I haven't really been to the studio in like a while.
Summers are tough. Summers are hard, yeah.
Right, and now that I'm putting all the dots together, you were creating all this work at the house because of the situation.
Well, I didn't really do much at the house either. I tried to, but at home is where I started. I've started, I should say, playing more with metal and incorporating wood and stuff into some pieces.
Okay.
And I haven't shared much of that, but I have basically an entire shed of metal siding buried in my backyard.
The wife is happy about that.
Well, the property, the house that we bought, when it was built, the person who had the house built also had a shed. The footprint was almost as big as the house itself, but he ran a business. He was a house painter, and that's where he ran his business out of.
Okay.
At some point between, that shed deteriorated and came down, but apparently they had just piled it all up and left it there. And,
Okay.
and over the decades, the earth had covered it. And I discovered some scraps during the pandemic, and then I found the entire thing. I was like, holy cow. And I mean, there's some really interesting stuff painted on the insides of these. There's old padlocks, stuff like that. And I wanted to kind of expand what I was doing on the canvas into metal, different shapes, dynamics, depth.
Right.
So I was playing around with that at home, painting on metal, things like that. What I'm doing now is an extension of what I've been doing, but there's a lot more spirituality in it. There's a lot more.
How would you say that?
Because there is. The reason I say that is because as I as we talked earlier, I'm active in my church. I don't say I'm religious, but I have a religious practice that I try to maintain, a spiritual practice. And so a lot of my paintings, they're not overtly religious. And I don't want them to be. I know, like, religion, and as we were talking off this, there's people have a very difficult, relationship with religion. My wife is a born and raised Catholic kid, right? And she doesn't believe anything right now. It's just sort of one of those things where, like, you have so. It was more of a dialogue between me and God and exploring that space. So I'd say what happens between me and the canvas is a conversation with God.
Whew.
And
that's happy.
And when I speak of God, I speak of a God that is like just nothing but this infinite outpouring of love for everybody and everything. Right, that there's it's about transformation, and my paintings, I think, are about transformation, and about me transforming, and there's balance, and it's interesting. I never thought about this.
I'm so intrigued.
So the colors, so the colors, like what I started painting was how I wanted to feel. Okay. I wanted to reflect how I want to feel. I want to look into these paintings and see this color, this vibrancy, this energy, this positivity that's in the work, and that's what I want to reflect to myself. And Van Gogh was very, I think I forget the quote, but he painted often like, I want to paint how I want to feel, and these vibrant, bright colors.
Just watched the biopic.
Yeah,
changed everything. I did not know.
Is that the one with Willem Dafoe?
Yes.
Gates, the gates of heaven or eternity or something like that.
That was different. Gate. Yeah, but they were trying to tell him, no, you need to paint like this. He's like, no, I need to paint fast. This is how I feel. He felt, that's where he felt his, but it's interesting hearing you talk about that being the communication with God.
Well, it's not just that, like,
or being one aspect of it.
Yeah, it's a communication with myself. It's being it. I think any artist that paints or does it doesn't really matter with anything. When you are immersed in your work, right. It's this. You become almost connected to it in a way that everything is shut out, right? I forget that I have a family. I forget that I have problems, and that I forget that that I have stress and all of this. It becomes this experience. It becomes a prayer, and
that's what I look for.
Yeah,
that's to me, that's the peak.
Yeah,
that's the thing that when I get that moment that you're speaking of, is a moment of bliss for me. It's the moment I chase.
Yeah.
And
it's incredible, and the more I become open to it, the more I don't want to use the word sublime. I think that's a little too far, but the more maybe the more enriched I feel, the more at peace I feel. I can say painting's a therapy, and maybe it is for me. But for me, I think more it's a conversation.
Conversation. If you were to put words to some of those conversations that you were having, for maybe a piece downstairs, if you could pick a particular one and maybe one of those conversations, can you mind if we talk about it?
Yeah, a lot of it is about asking myself for forgiveness for myself.
Where did that conversation lead to?
Well, it comes with a mature approach to addressing trauma, addressing like why insecurity, like what are the sources of these things? Why do I have this inferiority complex? Why do I have this, need to please, this need to be,
it's very interesting because when we were talking downstairs, and I was trying to say, what were you trying to say with this work? What were you trying? He said absolutely nothing. You were like it was more of a discovery.
Yeah, and some of them are more. They're more influenced. I have one mystical entry, and it's. I'm influenced by Gothic architecture in general, but I love I love churches and the architecture of Gothic and Romanesque type church. Big arches. I see them as they're metaphors for gateways, for entryways, for protection. There's all kinds of things you can wrap into that, and then you add in all the colors of stained glass. And this, and let's just remove religion, ideology out of the. Let's just take that out of the picture. Just the pure ingenuity and imagination and wonder and curiosity it takes to construct something like that.
And they had it right back then.
And it's fascinating to me. And then, so some of those pieces are more, there's definitely a feel of like, well, this feels like a church, or this feels like a place of worship, right? And that's what I went for, but I wanted to do it abstractly, and that's where I started experimenting, bringing in like tissue paper and cut paper more into it. The layering.
This one, as you were talking about jazz music, and you were talking about these different elements, and now like me going back to what I've seen downstairs, there is a rhythm to it. There is a this is going to be interesting now, going back and revisiting the pieces, like even with the windows. Almost there was elements of like windows and different things of that nature. How does one of those pieces start for you? Is it more like I go in, I throw paint on a canvas?
It starts with it.
Stop. Don't give me that.
It starts with anxiety.
Anxiety.
I will have a blank canvas for sometimes 2 or 3 weeks that I just walk around, that I'm afraid to start on. There's literally this fear of messing it up. And
that shocks me.
No,
that shocks me.
Yeah, it is, and I'll finally get to a point. Oftentimes I start on a raw canvas.
Okay.
And I like to work on the floor. And part of the reason I like to work on the floor before I even stretch the canvas is just the way I work. Right. There's a lot of like pulling of paint, and I want that paint to create a transparency. But when I work on stretcher bars, I sometimes I'm somewhat aggressive. You start picking up the frame, it's holding it on place, and it bows, right? So the canvas will bow while you're pulling, and so the edges are harder. And sometimes I want that, but I'll do as much as I can until I get to a place where I feel like it's ready to be stretched, and then continue working on it there. So a lot of times I'm a big, Helen Frankenthaler is one of my favorite artists, and she worked on raw canvas, and they're massive canvases, and would dilute her paints, and it was almost like watercolor on canvas, and just create these massive, emotionally moving pieces. And I like that, and I like that I kind of let go of control to begin a painting, right? And sometimes I'll end up gessoing over the whole thing, or I'll work it to a point where I'm like, I'm not feeling this, and most of the time the gesso is just on part of it. I'll just create this big, and then I'll go in and keep painting, and it creates layer after layer, and it's kind of like seek and ye shall find, right?
Yeah.
It's not that you. It's in the seeking that you find, right? It's not that. It's in the exploration, the understanding, that you find the understanding, and that you find, right? It's not like there's an end to it. It's not like you're looking for an Easter egg on Easter Sunday, right? Or you're snooping around your parents' room looking for a present at Christmas.
And what kills me is that our understanding now is going to change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It will just get deeper and deeper as we get more experiences. Right. You can look back on this work, and the idea of where it started from, the foundation is strong, but the what you get from it just can continue to evolve. When you were speaking of, you'll walk past a blank canvas for 2 weeks.
Sometimes,
sometimes for 2 weeks. There's people out there that other artists out there that think, you just kind of, something like this just appears, and it's a whole process. It's overcoming yourself to put that first strike down. When I'm creating, it's so interesting, because when I'm creating, what I'll do is I'll keep creating a mess on the canvas to get used to the action, and then I find something in it that I pull from. I have to kind of create that situation of what it is. Like, I don't want to, or at least how I'm creating now.
Yeah.
And that's just, sometimes it happens differently, but recently I've been kind of doing that, which is cool, because maybe my works will come out just as cool as the ones downstairs. You see what I just did there?
Yeah.
You see what I just did there? But it's
comparison is the killer of joy.
Oh, it is, and that's something I battle with as well, man. And I think a lot of creatives do, but I think the joy in creation comes when you can kill that idea that it needs to be better than someone else's, or better than what I created before.
And that's a dangerous word, right? Better? Because it's so subjective. Better than what? Like, it's a verb, right? We're going to end, we're going to end it as a noun. Like, I want to be better. That doesn't say anything.
Yeah. Right. How do you measure your, or do you even measure where you are creatively now than where you were 2 years ago? Or a few years back?
Well, I don't know as if I measure that in as much as I recognize that there's a growth, right? That there's a continued push towards discovery. Discovery of what, I'm not sure. It's like being on the open ocean and you don't know where you're going, kind of thing, right? It's just like, I know I'm looking for something, but I haven't quite found it yet. And that's what I mean by the seeking part. It's like you're looking for something, and along the way things are happening, and just because you've opened yourself up,
right?
You've made yourself vulnerable in that. And the work I was doing 2 years ago was in some ways similar, but also in other ways very different. The subject matter was different. I was still, it was still personal. I was still, working through representing my feelings of insecurity and avoidance, and using fantasy as a way of doing that, right? Romanticizing being a cowboy or an astronaut. It was a common theme in that show.
Yeah, that was amazing. The bull was my favorite.
The what?
The bull, and the work I'm working on now is actually inspired by the presence of that piece, that bigger piece. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
I can't wait to show you. I'll show you after we get done.
But those works were also influenced by my by my love of Picasso's work and his figurative work. So you see some of that in there, sometimes more than not. Especially kind of with the bulls, I found that a fascinating subject matter. And so I like I said earlier, I was done with that, and I just wanted to get back to more abstract. More abstract work I think it's more welcoming to people. It's safer in a lot of ways. A lot of people don't like it or they don't get it, and that's fine. It's subjective, right? But it's also open to interpretation, which is why someone asks me, tell me about this painting, what's this about? I'll ask them, well, what do you get from it first? I don't want to lead you on. I don't want to, I don't want to create this dichotomy of right and wrong. I don't want to enter into a dualistic conversation that says this is what it is and it can't be anything else. Because that, that ends a conversation, and that also introduces shame and judgment into the work, and I don't see that at all. Am I supposed to see that?
Yeah, that has been a common. I'm not going to call it a problem, but it has been the beginning of my journey was always to try to explain what is on that canvas, and not realizing, and maybe that's how I needed to be in my journey at that point in time, but me not realizing when I do that, I rob the opportunity of someone else's interpretation of it. You kill the conversation right there. And a lot of times where I'm at now is like showing my work to someone and seeing what they see in it, which to me, it gives me joy that someone is getting something from it. Yeah. But I just know it's just I appreciate you actually saying that,
and that's like, and that's not to say that I think that somebody who has something to say with a painting and wants to say this is what this is. There's nothing wrong with that either.
Okay, because I was worrying for a second.
No. There's nothing wrong with that, because we're all in different places with our work, and we all come to our work from different places and from different experiences, and the stories we want to tell or the feelings or emotions we want to convey. Sometimes a painting is, of a landscape is just a painting of a landscape. There's nothing laying underneath it. There's no sort of, well, this is representing something deeper, right? And same with an abstract. Sometimes, it's just an exploration of color. Joseph Albers is really probably the best teacher of color theory I think you can have. I mean, he's been dead a long time, but his book Imitations of Color is still used in colleges for color theory and for understanding balance and relationship of color. I think that's the most important. That's a very important thing for me. Is
of color.
So, for example, you can have an orange next to 3 different yellows, and that orange is going to look different next to those 3 different yellows, right? Right. Because one is subtracting from the other. The yellow is subtracting that certain yellow out of the orange.
Yeah, I need to pick this book up for one.
And it's fascinating, and so that's very important in my work. Is how the colors relate to each other, So getting back to Ellsworth wasn't trying to say like any type of deep thing, with his work. It was just color relationship, color field art. Yeah.
Well, speaking of color, a dance with color. Why was that the name of the show? Obviously, I know there's some resemblance from the story you just told us, but why did you choose that name?
Well, I think I love watching people dance. It's just one of those things I love.
It's kind of creepy. No, I'm just messing with you. I'm just kidding.
It's beautiful, right? I'm not a dancer myself, but it's a beautiful thing to watch, especially when 2 people are dancing with each other and they know each other, and there's an intimacy between them, and to just watch them move together.
Yeah.
The footwork,
Yeah.
and if they're really good, you feel that passion. You feel that, and so it's not.
That's beautiful.
So when I titled my show "A Dance with Color," it's not a literal understanding of actual physical dancing. It's that relationship of how we move with each other, with color, and how it moves us. And my work is full of movement. It just has an energy that I bring to it. Working on the floor and moving around allows me, to use my whole body to create the I don't just work for my elbow.
Yeah.
I work for my whole body to create some of these movements because I want them to be fluid and
you feel that. You can't stand still. Like it does feel even as if the pieces are kind of jumping.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like they're still. It feels like the wall may be still, but they're moving. And the lady that came in when you were here, she also referenced it feels almost like the 60s. She did say that. It was just so wild that you just mentioned the reference of or maybe even the 70s, but it just feels there was a rhythm there. There was a moment she was having. I truly, I remember the first time I went to your studio and seeing the works with the cowboys and the astronauts, and there was this abstract piece that I got a chance to see it again downtown when you were doing the arts festival and you were in there. But there was an abstract piece, and I was waiting. I was waiting because you said, no, it's seeing your piece is more figurative. When I seen that abstract piece, it was one of those pieces that hit me.
Yeah.
And getting the chance to see you dive into this realm of letting my mind explore and letting me find out what's in there, that journey, and coming from your mind and your set of the way you approach life, it's been very intriguing, and I can't wait now to actually go back and see it. Because now I'm kind of understanding where some of these pieces are influenced. The music you were listening to, it feels like jazz. There's a piece down there I'm trying to think of the name of it, but the piece more towards the end. I told you it was my favorite piece when we had that was behind the bar.
Oh yeah, sideshow. And that was kind of it's.
Can we talk about sideshow?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So. There are pieces that are very clearly have a jazz feel to them. Right? Much of that there's just this sort of, I think someone said like scat kind of feel. I was talking to another artist who came to the show, and he and his friend they're both love jazz,
Right.
And I asked that they play jazz music, some jazz music. And I think it was Cowboy Bebop that they put on, and it was just sort of this. It connects with the paintings, right? It just is like, oh yeah, not all of them, because by the time I got to Sideshow, I was trying to recapture an energy that was no longer there, because I had gone all summer without painting,
right?
And I had given up 10 of my paintings for Art on the Walls, which was is now no longer in existence with Greater Pittsburgh Art Council. So they were hanging up in an office somewhere,
right,
non-accessible to people, except by appointment. But seriously, who's going to make an appointment to go downtown, 27 stories up, into people's offices to look at work?
Gotcha.
So anyway, those, I didn't have that work, and that's a lot of what's down there. So there's a definite energy that if you look at those, next to that is different. So I tried to recapture that, and the work became a little more opaque. But I was also exploring a little bit more by taping off areas and creating different shapes and building off of those and painting right out of the tube. Like, some of those thicker lines and stuff, I just put the tube. I do not like cleaning brushes.
I don't either. I'm like this.
Them.
I'm like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm throwing things on. Oh, I'm so happy you said that.
So Sideshow was just one of those. It started out as a painting that I wanted to create that was influenced by another painting I saw, and it was just, when you're not being real, when it's not jiving, and it was just sort of looking at it. But some things in there survived, and I experimented with some things that I really liked, and then I don't know if it's a mistake or if it's smart, or if it's just it just is what it is. But I'll ask my wife. I'll show her a picture. Hey, what do you think of this? Because I'll be excited about it, and she's like, "Oh, that looks like an octopus. Why are you painting an octopus?" I'm like, I didn't see that.
That's your cheat code.
And then I could no longer see anything but what she saw. And so like I just kept building on top of that, painting over it. Like, this doesn't feel real. Yeah. It doesn't feel like what I wanted to do. And so I just started layering color and building shapes and mark making. Right. And the title was just born out of the finale of it. I don't go into anything. I'm going to paint this and it's going to be called. Yeah. It's more of I'm just going to paint and then I'm going to draw from it. Right. I think they're back to cutting.
Oh, they're back to cutting. So before we started the actual sit down, the podcast, we had to wait because if you guys can hear on the back end, they're cutting cement back there. So I ain't gonna let this stop us. We in the thick of it. Yeah. We're gonna figure this thing out. This is like abstract painting. Sometimes you just gotta feel your way through those little avenues.
We're just up here having a conversation. They're out there earning a paycheck to take home to their families.
Absolutely. So I respect them. I appreciate them. And the world ain't always built for the stars. Don't always align, but you gotta figure out your way to your destination. Yeah. We're gonna stick to landing. That's where we're at. So that was dope. So as we continue to go through it, and we can hear the saw cutting through the concrete. Speaking of the work, how do you feel about the show? Do you feel like you're done? Did you get everything off of your chest that you needed to say with this work right here, or are you still exploring the abstract world right now?
Well, first off, I didn't feel like I needed to get anything off my chest. There was nothing like I needed to say or wanted to say. Secondly, like the show isn't the show that I wanted necessarily.
Okay.
When I agreed and we set the dates, it was early spring of this year, and I thought I would have the summer to work on stuff.
I know, yeah.
But then life hits, reality hits, and so most of my summer into September, my full-time job was job hunting. It was a very hard season.
Right.
It was very stressful. There was a lot of anxiety. Money was going out far faster than it was coming in. I wasn't getting any type of muraling jobs or any, it just felt like the well was dry. Right. And I was scared and I was desperate, and my wife and I had some pretty serious, real conversations, and I just, so I had to I said, it's time, I got to get some work.
Absolutely.
And I put it out there that I was looking, and I was, the response I got was humbling, and I was so grateful for it, because so many people were looking for work for me.
Right.
They were helping,
Right.
And now I have, 2 jobs, 2 part-time jobs that still give me the freedom to create works for, public artwork and murals time in the studio.
I love that you're talking about this. Because I think more people need to hear it.
Yeah, and I recognize that, I've been privileged and fortunate the last 10 years.
Right.
That we live well within our means. Mm-hmm. My wife, she's the steady, right? She's the foundation that, I have health insurance. I have these things that so many of our friends and colleagues in art don't have, right? That they're hustling and so I'm given the latitude to just create art without thinking about I need to sell this, right? I learned a few years ago that when I painted that way, the work was garbage. It was rubbish. It wasn't honest.
I love that. I love that you're talking about this, man.
And now I'm painting, and for the last couple of years, I just decided I don't care if this sells or not. If I'm painting, see, a lot of that mentality is this consumerist-driven society that we live in. You got to buy, and so many people now want to be artists. They want to make a living as an artist, and I think some of what we're longing for is this romanticized view of our favorite artists in the past. Common wants Picasso. Picasso was poor as shit for so much of his life.
Man,
right?
And
he lived through 2 world wars, a flu epidemic,
depression as well.
Oh yeah, I mean he never left Europe. He was, but economic depressions that happened in Europe.
Right.
He went through a whole lot.
Absolutely.
Right? You look at for me, it's the modern art era of the 50s and 60s in New York City, especially post World War II.
Right.
Like Jackson Pollock and de Kooning and Lee Strauss, and all these Lee Krasner and all these fantastic artists, but their lives were miserable.
Yeah.
There were artists that died of starvation during the Depression.
Literally starvation.
It's not this romantic time. I mean, Jackson Pollock only saw financial success for a short period of his life.
Yeah.
And he was so insecure as a human being anyway, he couldn't enjoy it.
Right.
And that goes across the board. I mean, how many Gorky committed suicide? Rothko committed suicide. There's just this deep depression and deep pain and suffering that went into this work that we romanticize now. And, I want to be like this. I don't want to be like anybody. I don't want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
Right?
Talk that talk too.
And
talk, man.
I want to be. There's that line. You ever watch Ted Lasso?
Oh, absolutely, bro.
There's that line where Ted's asked Jamie. Says, Jamie, you could be a lion or a panda. What would you be? I forget the other language.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I would want to be anybody else but me. And Ted Lasso said, I don't think you understand how emotionally secure that is, Jamie.
That's real.
And how truthful that is. But we have to come to that point. We have to work for that point. And it's so hard we are so inundated with branding, with creating this identity for ourselves that we put out to the world, or that we're now told or expected to do, right?
Man, talk it, man. Talk that talk, Tim.
And where's the art in that? It robs us of our art. And I get it. I understand. We want to make a living doing what we love, right? All of us do. But it's only a very small percentage of us that will get to that point.
I think when it comes to creating, the most joy I get is when I don't attach anything to it.
Yeah.
When I don't attach it, I actually, like you said, no one could be a better Picasso than Picasso could be a Picasso. There's no reason for you to want to be the Picasso. That is a unaccomplishable goal. Yeah. And there's a lot of pain in that. Doing art, don't get me wrong, financial gain is great and everything, but doing art solely for that, you're not going to get everything it has to offer.
Right.
And which deprives the world of seeing the beautifulness of who you actually are.
Yeah.
That individuality, that thing that makes you who your name is, could only be seen. In my mind, the best version of yourself is the purest version of yourself is authenticity. And if you're being driven by everybody else's desires, the true version of yourself or that what you may think the true version of yourself is truly the reflection of what the world sees you as instead of what you actually are.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I think we have to go through that, right? We have to
the process.
You know, we have to go through that period of. Well, I don't want to say we have to. I don't want to put that kind of
Pressure on, yeah, I got it.
I don't want to attach that to it because everybody's a little bit different. But we all have our artistic influences, artists that or eras that we are heavily influenced by, artists that we are that have been impressed upon us.
Absolutely.
And it's natural then to draw from their styles,
Right.
and paint that way.
Absolutely.
But that's just part of being on the journey and on the path to hopefully discovering who we actually are as artists aside from our influences.
Absolutely.
And you know, I'm a big Jackson Pollock fan. Always have been, but I'm also and you have to put his work into context. A lot, you know, people. That's another problem. Is people take the work out of the context of when it was painted, and what was going on in art at the time.
Right. They see it for what it is now, not
Right.
what it actually was to the artist at that time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or even
I got
to
it.
the world.
To the world.
Right.
Okay.
But I love throwing paint.
Yeah.
So you will find that in a lot of my work. I will get to a point in my paintings where I'm not sure where it's going. I don't know where it's at. And it's at that point where I will take black or white and I will just throw it.
I've seen it downstairs.
Yeah.
Actually, in the work down there, the very first piece when you come to the right has that black,
Yeah.
just
And that's when you know
natural.
that
Like
I
love
had
that.
come to a crossroad in my work painting where I was not sure where to go. And so how do you know, so I don't have a roadmap for this.
Yeah.
And see, it's almost out of frustration. Like I can kind of control, by throwing it, I can create a gesture, but I also don't have complete control over where it's all going. And so it's allowing that to sit and looking what's in there and what do I want to pull away or build on, keep, all that kind of stuff.
Love that.
And it really does open me up to continue the work, to continue the painting. Sometimes it gets painted over, sometimes it doesn't. But it is always there as a marker, as a way to direct me or open me up to moving forward.
So, how many of those pieces downstairs have been painted 4 times, man? if you can put
Well,
that.
I guess that depends on what you mean by 4 times, because it's a continual building and building and building and building and building.
Ooh, so, better question. How many pieces down there don't feel finished?
Probably 2 of them, I would say.
2 of them.
Yeah.
And how do you identify? Can you put that in words of how you identify when something is done?
Just feel it. It just feels there's a comfort there. There's a satisfaction maybe.
Do you ever feel like that's what's driving everything? Is that feeling? Is just to get to that point?
No, I think that's just kind of a reward, a benefit, because I don't think anybody who creates something, and maybe I'm being naive,
Or maybe you need to be.
but
In this,
I don't think anybody who creates something knows when it's done until it's done. And only they can define when it's done.
it's like you know it when you see it.
I think so.
That type
Yeah.
of thing. And just certain things are just like that.
I mean, just speaking for myself, but there's a confidence, I think, too, that is achieved over time, and maybe if you're lucky and you're just confident outright, you reach that point earlier, where you know it's at a point that if you keep working it, you're going to ruin it. That you are at this place where, like, I feel really good about this. I'm going to set it aside for a few days, come back and look at it, and if I'm still feeling the same thing, if I get to a point where I'm trying to find something on there that's wrong or that doesn't fit, then I know the painting's done.
That's good information because at this moment I used to finish pieces in the moment, like I felt like I would lose that energy that started it. So a lot of my pieces were done fast, and they had a tempo of I just need to keep going right now and then put it to the side. But I'm at this point in the journey now where it takes time to create a piece. I have to walk away from it and come back to actually see what it is. Does it need another stroke? And also, like, I think subconsciously I just want to hold on to it a little bit more, give it more time. Like, I feel like these pieces now deserve time in between, as well as myself, was there ever a point in time where did any of these pieces only take one sitting, or are they all?
Some of them.
Some of them are?
Some, I'd say probably the ones I did in the spring of 2023.
Right.
Some of them, just one or two, just took one sitting.
One sitting.
But I was also starting to this energy that I had lasted for several weeks. I was just recalling how I felt in Mexico, recalling how I wanted to feel. I was tired of demonstrating outwardly what I was feeling inward, and so it was easy to kind of recapture that energy every time I went in. I was working with the same color palette.
Okay.
But there would be, there are pieces down there that have cut paper, and I'd have to let them dry before I could go back to them.
Right.
I was also working on several pieces at the same time. And so, just going from one to the next, because they are a similar body.
Exactly,
just each individual pieces of the same body.
Yeah, each piece definitely speaks to the next piece.
Yeah.
Like, they are communicating with each other on each side of the wall. Like, you can truly tell it is a body of work. It is a body of work that comes from the same bloodline. Very interesting, man. Hey, those guys are really going at it out there.
They are.
They are really going.
Is it disrupting the sound?
Yeah, like a little
pretty
bit,
bad.
a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe it's not. But I think because of the way we're yelling, because of the way it is, we may be talking a little higher than we need to.
All right.
For where we're going. But you know what, though? I think this is one of those things where this is the first time, not the last time.
Okay.
And we need to bring this back. I think in general, I think me and you should probably just sit down here and chop up whatever is coming up in
literally, like the sidewalk out there.
Just like these guys out here working hard, man. There was a lot of other conversations that happen in this general conversation that I would love to tap on of, navigating a season that is dry, and doing whatever it takes to continue to keep doing what we love. And being okay with that, and how those experiences can actually transfer into the work and be fuel more than a deterrent of why not to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was just so much there, man. And I just want to say thank you.
Sure.
We're in the
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. We're at the TT Studios, man. And if you guys haven't had a chance, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays between 11 to 4 at the TT Studios located at 1020 North Canal Street, Sharpsburg, PA, 15215. You see how I got that?
Yeah.
I got that down, man. I got that down.
You
Yeah.
did.
Come and visit the new work of Tim Engelhardt, A Dance with Color. I bet you, you will not be disappointed, and it'll be a great way to spend an afternoon. Bring your loved ones. Bring the cavalry. Bring them all.
Bring your checkbook.
Bring your checkbook as well. All of these pieces are available for you to take home and for you to enjoy at your house as well, or in your lobby, or a great gift for the holidays. But it is. They do dance off the wall, so I'll let you know that when A Dance with Color is where it's at. Tim, thank you so much, my friend, and until next time, because there will be a next time. Like I said, first time, not the last time. You guys are watching another episode of a podcast about nothing with your boy, Corey Chai, and thank you, Tim, for coming back on, man.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. We need you to sign the table now. And we are out. Have a good one.